knows how many hours you guys have personally put into like porting everything over and going over logs and contacting people and getting shit together. You know, like you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't really, ultimately, if you didn't really love DFC and want it to kind of like come to fruition and kind of get what you had back.
Of course,
you know?
Yeah. I think that's enough inspiration for any of us really to do anything related to
absolutely
the game. Yeah.
And I think it's just amazing how many people, like, if you go on like the DFC on Facebook, like how many people are actually like part of that group, and how many more people who kind of just maybe haven't even heard of it, because it seems like every day someone's like, oh my god, like I was just thinking about DFC, it's been so long, and then I googled it and then I find this and this is amazing. Just things like that really make me happy, because it just tells you just how much this game meant to everybody and how well it's held up. Because like I sit here and I play games like Fallout 4, if anyone's playing that, and things like that, and you know, I always like still I go back to DFC and just think about how much of a good time I had and like how amazing the game actually was, and the concept, like how revolutionary it was at that time, because the DFC's model kind of has been the model for like so many games at this point, just the whole realm versus realm aspect of it, and it's just
right.
You know, it's held up really well for what it is for a MUD, and I don't think there's any MUD out there that even compares. There's nothing that compares to it, I don't think, at this point.
Yeah, I think time and time again, you'll hear one of us or all of us say, we've looked for games constantly and just have not found a replacement. So I think that says a lot. So we want to, bring it back and just have it available, and then worry about all the nonsense after that.
I mean, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what you guys kind of like bring to the table. I mean, even the Echoes client, like I have a blast just running through it, and even though it's really limited in what you can do, I just getting on it for even 10 minutes just to run around and kind of like just revisit old areas and kind of like imagine what it would be like to play the game again. So what you guys are doing with Rises really has me excited, and I'm hoping that for the first time in a really long time, I actually have faith in the actual completion of this project, as opposed to Syra, for example, and I guess there was another Darkness Falls client. I think Seagros is doing one at that point. I can't remember the name of it, but actually,
you had Shags like Shattered Glory. There were a lot of little projects.
Yeah. So I mean, this one I actually really have, because now, like, it's there, right? You guys pretty much have all the basic pieces for what you need to actually have something tangible. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more work in terms of like rebuilding the jobs and what they had, and kind of debugging and testing exactly how things, like the RNG, like how the random number generator will work in combat, and like how certain things play out. But you have the backbone. Yeah, what they said. Like, you have the backbone to like the game, like, which is the lands and kind of like the art and kind of like how to move through, and you have the objects and the items and things like that, and like, because if you didn't have that, that would probably take a lifetime to get all the text and all the rooms fleshed out and everything else. So, and you have the basis for everything. Like, you have the information on the jobs, what spells they had, kind of like how things worked. So you have a lot of really good, valuable information to build something on, which is really good. So you probably saved yourself a few years of work at the very least, getting all that information.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I mean, Owen, I'm sorry, Owen, but what Owen was doing at the beginning, before he found out about that rooms.doc file, he was actually going through and recreating the areas by hand, like going from scratch. And I don't know how he got as far as he did doing it that way. I really don't.
It was fun. I mean, I look back on that and smile, because compared to what it is now, and they still are in the game. Like, we haven't erased any of it. It doesn't look any different to everyone else, but it's the custom one room by one room redrawing of the map and figuring out, okay, I fucked up and I gotta fix the exits to another area, or I basically started in Timia local or Timia town center, and worked my way to recreate it. And at that point, Echoes had just released, and that was very helpful. So I was able to kind of alt tab back and forth. But yeah.
I guess that's it. I mean, if you guys have more questions about like my opinions on anything, if that matters to anyone, I don't know if it does at this point. But like any other, because I played every class in Evil except for Sin. Sin is the only class I never actually played in Evil. I had access to everything at one point or another, and obviously, my own 3 characters were Coven, Revenant, and and Wolf. But you know, when I was with like characters like, if anyone remembers Lauren, aka Cassadia, like she had a Fixer Demon. Like I played her for a while. I played her Skeleton for a while. I played her husband. He had a Nosferatu and a Burning Hand and stuff like that. So, and just playing against other jobs and seeing how they were nerfed or pumped at one point or another. I mean, because there's a lot of fun stuff that they did to try and balance stuff. If anyone remembers when Lizardmen were forced to only single train breath, for example, for a while, and that was a fucking shit show if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand, you know, wanting to fix the damage output, but you can't have it. I mean, that's a little much.
Well, there was a theory that I forgot whose theory it was. The reason, part of why they decided to do that is because the theory was that Percept was a hidden modifier for Lizardman Breath, and because Lizardmen had 2 points in general, so they were double training Breath, and they were also getting double in Percept, that their breath damage was going through the roof. I don't know. I doubt that was the case. I mean, but there were a lot of hidden modifiers of skills. The one that actually was confirmed was Nosferatu Drain. The hidden modifier, the damage booster for that, the skill was Sneak. Sneak was actually a modifier for it, so they were able to double train Sneak, and they had Sneak spells. Their drain damage was ridiculous, like really, really, really strong. Right. So things like that.
Well, so you brought up the general and magic and defense and thiefly points, and I know I have a basic understanding of the system, but maybe you can kind of elaborate a little bit as to what those actually meant.
Okay, so every class or job in the game had certain skills available to them. So, and every skill was put into a category. So weapons, for example, Evil had the weapon skill. That would be part of the offensive category. Evasion was a defensive skill, so that would be part of the defensive category. So you had 6 categories, maybe 7. Let me write them down. So you had offense, defense, magic, thiefly, general, and I think that's it. And then you had the miscellaneous. I know that distinctly, and I'll explain that for later why I learned about that, how I learned about that distinctly. So every class had a certain amount of points attributed to one of those categories. So for example, werewolves, this is because I know that, like blindfolded, I know exactly what they had. They had 2 in offense, they had 3 in defense, they had 1 in general, they had 0 in thiefly, 0 in magic, and 0 in miscellaneous. So they had 6 total points. And this wasn't, by the way, like cookie cutter. Like, it wasn't like every job had 6 points spread between the categories. Skeletons had 7 points. Skeletons had 3 offense, 3 defense, 1 general. Revenants or necromancers, they had 0 offense, I think 1 defense, 2 general, 2 magic, 1 thiefly. So the way it worked, though, for example, is if you had 2 points in general, for example, this is the best one I can get. So general skills would be something like perception. Perception was in the general skill classification. Climb and jump were in general skills. Use item was a general skill. Bandage was a general skill. So if you leveled up, you became level 10, and you had a certain amount of TP, but the way DFC worked, especially in Evil, I don't really remember how it worked in Good and Chaos. I know they had more TP, but I don't think any job can train a skill more than twice, depending on how much TP they had. So necromancers could train percept twice. So you'd get 1 point for each perception train. But as you leveled up, if they had 2 points in general, every other level they would either get 1 free point in percept, or they would get 2 free points in percept, depending on how many points they had in a certain skill. So necromancers had 2 points in general, so they would get 1 free point in percept every level, no matter what. So every time they trained percept, every level, they would end up, if they double trained percept, they would end up getting 3 points in percept every level. If, for example, a wolf had 1 point in general, they would get 1 point in percept one level, and they would get 0 free points in percept the other level. So if they were level 10, they would get, and they double train percept, maybe that level they would end up with 3 percept. But then level 11, if they double train percept, they would end up with just 2 points in percept. If that makes any sense.
It does.
I'm
so
not
basically the amount of points that you have in each skill tree, I guess, if you will, determines how much extra you get, either every level or every other level.
Basically, yeah. So for example, like wolves had 3 points in defense, so every level they were guaranteed, if they double trained evasion, they were guaranteed 3% in evasion. But the other level, so if they leveled to 10 and they got that 3 points in evasion, because they had 3 points in defense, if they've leveled to level 11, they would end up with 4 points in evasion. So
okay, was that 1 for 1? So like if you had 1 point, you get 1%, or did that count for multiple percent?
So if you had 1 point in like general, like I said with like werewolves, they had 1 point in general. They were guaranteed 1 free point in perception every other level.
Okay.
So if they didn't train perception at all, they would get 1 free point in perception every other level because they had 1 point in general. So one level they would get 3 for double training percept. One level they would get 3%, and then in the very next level they would get 2% if they double train percept. And then the next level they would end up getting 3%. So 1% would be free, and then the other 2% would be from what they trained.
Right.
So, and that's basically how it worked. And then the only skill that I know of for a fact that was attached, this is why wolves had such a hard time in the beginning. The only skill that was attached to miscellaneous point for whatever reason was shapeshift. Shapeshift was only affected by the miscellaneous point, and wolves had no points in miscellaneous. So I'd be like level 70, and I'd have like 200 points, 200% for double training shapeshift. I'd be level 70 max rank, and I'd have like 210, 215, 230. And then what affected your success rate in shapeshift was not only the skill, but the level of the form, whatever level the form was set to. So if the form was set to be like a level 200 monster, I'd be sitting there forever trying to shapeshift, and I'd fail all day. But they figured out that the level of the form did not matter in terms of what I was capable of doing, only the skills, only the percentages of the form, if that makes any sense. So the middle ground for that was a lot of the wolf forms are set to like be level 40, level 30, even though I'm a level 75 character, and that made it easier for us to shapeshift.
Oh yeah, no it does. So did they ever explain these kind of things, like why they give werewolf class the shapeshift ability in miscellaneous but not giving them a miscellaneous point?
They didn't explain why, and I mean they could have easily, they had the power to give us a point in miscellaneous, but they later on opted to just rebuild wolves. A lot of pushing by me for a lot of the older wolves were rebuilt, because it was in the same vein as why skeletons and a lot of other jobs rebuilt, because they found through testing that there was a lot of accuracy issues with certain abilities, or certain abilities were capped. Like, I don't even know how true it is. I feel like it was, but there's a lot of opinion that things like double and melee and berserk were capped in damage. That really all the damage came from training the actual weapon skill and not the actual like ability itself. If that makes any sense. So like weapon skill was where all the damage came from. Berserk was just accuracy and kind of like a little bit of a modifier. It just kind of gave you the ability, and past a certain point training Berserk meant nothing. Or past a certain point training melee meant nothing.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that. Like things
so-
like double.
So really, like